the big storyline, I guess, is that the GOP will have control of the House, but maybe to a degree that is far less than expected. Why? What does it mean about that party? What does it mean about the Democratic Party? And what does it mean for us as we try to move forward? Mark McKinnon will have good answers on all of this. Former advisor to George W. Bush and the late John McCain. It's good to see you.
Hi, Chris. How are you?
You tell me. What did you think you heard tonight at the White House?
I'm with you, brother. I mean, I think that this is good for the country. It suggests that we don't have this highly partisan reaction in this election, that we have, kind of a divided country, but not a completely polarized or completely partisan one. I think that there was a lot of decoupling going on, which I thought was interesting. I saw that in a lot of our reporting that, people seem to be very thoughtful in this election, and they weren't necessarily voting party lines as they might have in 18 or 20 or even 16, but they seem to be really, a more deliberative group of people. I saw Republicans that seemed to be excited, but the Democrats that seemed to be determined, and it was a very interesting kind of equation. But we got some balance here, and I think that that's going to be good for the country. Listen, I think it's gonna trim Kevin McCarthy's sails, and by trim I mean maybe hold back the Marjorie Taylor Greens from having as much influence as they thought they might have, which I think is good for the country.
If the margin is slim, though, she may have more muscularity than would have been expected, because that fringe population, he's going to need them.
Well, that's I'm not sure about that. I think that there would have been more of a mandate had the numbers been bigger. But that's an interesting argument you make. The thing that I hear, I was just over at the White House, Chris, and the thing that I hear there is that they're encouraged by three things. One, that it looks at least like there's a chance to hold on to the Senate now. It looks like abortion really was a much more relevant issue than the sort of the conventional wisdom suggested. Everybody thought, well, it was hot during the summer, kind of cooled off. Well, apparently it didn't. Apparently it was really an animating issue for a lot of Democrats, more so than the pundits and the media thought coming into the final weeks of this election. And finally, they're encouraged that where Biden went to blue states, Democrats did well. So the White House has a pretty good story to tell. At least a lot better story than they thought 24 hours ago.
And in terms of what do you think happens going forward, this idea that, oh, well, Biden will have to go now and work with McCarthy if he wants to get anything done. I don't mean to be cynical at all about this, but isn't the only advantage in opposition right now for Republicans? I mean, if they want to seem strong to the base, is there any chance that they want to work with Biden to get things done in his last 2 years?
Well, there might be a couple of things, Chris. There might be something on China. There might be something on tech, where there's, because there's not as many, because there's not the numbers that Republicans thought they had, where there might be a meeting of the minds. I'm a prisoner of hope. So, but listen, I mean, I think there's a reality that's likely to set in, which is that there's probably going to be a Republican House. And to your point, they're not, most of their base is not going to want to see them cooperating. They want to see them fighting.
Right. I mean, that's look, one of the many ills of the toxic twosome of this binary system with just two parties is that it is zero sum by its definition. You win because they lose. We got to figure a way to break out of that. Hopefully, the democracy working well and people being thoughtful, as you say, is a step in the right direction. But it's better than drama, I'll tell you that much. I was really worried that tonight was going to be a lot of drama, and so far there isn't, and that's great. Last word to you, McKinnon. What do you want people to know?
To kick it hard, carry on regardless, be prisoners of hope. I think there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And I think overall what tonight really says is that, it's not a partisan scream tonight. I think there's an echo from the country saying, listen, reel it in, guys. Reel it in, gals. Let's work together. Let's make a little progress. It doesn't have to all be fistfights in the mud.
Hey, thank you for watching. Please go to newsnationnow.com, newsnationnow.com, and you can find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button down below. Then you will get more of NewsNation's fact-driven coverage.